The man collapsed on Bessie Donovan's porch before sunrise, blood soaking through his torn shirt, and the sound of hoofbeats already thundering up the canyon road behind him. March 1891 in Cottonwood, Idaho Territory, and the hard winter had left everyone's nerves as raw as the empty shelves in her general store. She dragged him inside, his weight nearly buckling her knees, and kicked the door shut just as riders passed in the dark.
"Ma'am, they'll come back."
His voice was rough, breathless.
"You need to run."
I need to stop this bleeding first.
She pressed a clean cloth to his shoulder, her hand steady despite the fear racing through her chest. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe 28, with dark brown hair matted with sweat and blue eyes that tracked her every move like he was cataloging whether she'd betray him.
Who are you? And why are they chasing you?
Montgomery Harrison, stagecoach guard out of Boise. They set me up for a robbery I didn't commit.
She met his gaze, searching for the lie, but found only exhaustion and something fiercer, something that made her believe him. Outside, voices rose in the street, men demanding to know if anyone had seen a stranger.
Stay quiet.
She moved to the window, heart hammering, and called out that she'd been asleep and heard nothing. The riders muttered and moved on, but she knew they'd circle back.
Can you ride?
If I have to.
Then you're going to have to, because they won't stop until they hang someone, and I'm not letting it be you.
She pulled him to his feet, ignoring the way his hand gripped her shoulder for balance, the warmth of his palm burning through her dress. They stumbled to the back where her mare was stabled, and she threw a saddle on with practiced speed.
"You're coming with me."
This is my store.
"And it'll still be here when we prove I'm innocent. Right now, we both run, or we both die."
The bluntness of it hit her like a slap, and she realized he was right. If they found him here, she'd be an accomplice. She swung up behind him, her arms circling his waist to grip the reins, and they rode hard into the canyon as dawn broke pink and gold over the ridge. The canyon trail twisted narrow and steep, rocks skittering under the mare's hooves, and Montgomery leaned back against her to keep his balance.
There's a line shack 2 miles up. We can rest there.
They'll check every cabin between here and the pass.
Not this one. It's hidden behind a rock slide. My father used it during Roundup.
She felt him nod, his hair brushing her cheek, and tried to ignore the solid warmth of his back pressed against her chest. They rode in silence until the shack appeared, half buried in scrub pine and boulders. Inside, it smelled of dust and old leather, but it was defensible. She helped him down, and he staggered, catching himself on the doorframe.
Sit.
She pushed him toward a rickety chair and tore a strip from her petticoat to bind his wound properly. His shirt was ruined, dark with dried blood, and she tugged it aside without asking permission.
"You've done this before."
My father broke his leg in a fall. I set it myself and kept him alive until the doctor came 3 days later.
"Handy."
His mouth quirked, almost a smile, and she felt an answering tug in her chest.
Don't get charming. You're still bleeding.
She tied off the bandage, her fingers brushing the hard muscle of his shoulder, and he sucked in a breath.
"Sorry."
Don't apologize. Just tell me what happened.
He met her eyes, and the story spilled out, fast and bitter. Drexel Thornton, the station master in Cottonwood, had been running a racket for months, using false arrests to control who could leave town and when. He'd staged a stagecoach robbery meant to destroy a rival freight company and seize a valuable shipment of payroll gold. Montgomery had refused to cooperate, so Thornton framed him as the inside man.
He has a tell. Snakehead Kane. Taps it when he's angry. I saw him do it right before he sent his men after me.
I've seen that Kane. He was in my store last week asking about my ledgers.
He wants control of the whole supply line. If he owns the station and the stores, he decides who eats and who starves.
The weight of it settled over her like a stone.
So we prove you didn't do it.
How? They burned the stagecoach, killed the driver. There's no evidence left.
Then, we find new evidence.
She stood, pacing the tiny shack, and stopped at the window. Outside, the sun climbed higher, turning the canyon walls to bronze.
The next stagecoach comes through tomorrow. If Thornton's planning another hit, we catch him in the act.
That's suicide.
It's proof. And it's the only way to clear your name before the vigilantes hang you.
He stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Respect and disbelief tangled together.
You're either very brave or very foolish.
Probably both. Now rest. We ride at sunset.
They ate hardtack and jerky from her saddlebag, and Montgomery watched her move around the shack like she owned it, checking the window, testing the door latch, always thinking 3 steps ahead.
You're not what I expected.
What did you expect?
Someone who'd scream and faint.
I scream when it's useful. Fainting just wastes time.
He laughed. A short bark of sound that surprised them both, and she grinned. The tension between them shifted, lighter, and she sat beside him on the cot.
Tell me about the robbery. Every detail.
He walked her through it. The ambush on the canyon road. The masked riders. The way the driver had fought back and died for it. His voice went flat when he described finding the man's body.
Thornton's men took the gold and left me alive to take the blame. They knew I'd run, and running makes you look guilty.
But you didn't take anything.
No.
Then we find what he did take and prove it's in his possession.
She leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his, and he turned his head to look at her. Their faces were inches apart, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, the faint scar on his jaw.
Why are you helping me?
Because you're innocent. And because Thornton's been squeezing this town dry for too long.
And
I like your face.
The words slipped out before she could stop them, and heat flooded her cheeks. He blinked, then smiled, slow and devastating.
I like yours too.
The moment stretched, charged and fragile, and then hoofbeats drummed outside. They both froze.
How many?
3, maybe 4.
He reached for his gun, but she grabbed his wrist.
If you shoot, they'll know we're here.
If we don't, they'll find us anyway.
Not if we hide.
She pulled him toward the back corner, where a pile of old hay bales made a low wall. They squeezed behind it, pressed chest to chest in the narrow space, her heart hammering against his ribs. The door crashed open, boots thudding on the floorboards.
Don't move.
His breath was hot against her ear, his arm tight around her waist, and she bit her lip to keep silent. The men searched the shack, overturning the chair, kicking through the hay, and one of them stopped so close she could smell tobacco and sweat. Then a shout from outside, and they left. the door slamming behind them. She sagged against Montgomery, relief making her knees weak, and he steadied her, his hand warm on her back.
That was too close.
You're shaking.
So are you.
They stayed there, tangled together, until the hoofbeats faded. When they finally pulled apart, her hand lingered on his chest, feeling the steady thud of his heartbeat.
We need a better plan.
We need leverage. Something that ties Thornton to the robbery.
Like what?
Like the payroll ledger. If he took the gold, he has to account for it somewhere. And I know where he keeps his records.
They rode back to Cottonwood after dark, keeping to the ridgeline where the pines grew thick. The town spread below them, lamps glowing in windows, and Bessie pointed to the train station at the far end of the main street.
Thornton's office is on the second floor. He locks it, but the window latch is broken. I know because I delivered supplies there last month.
You're not going in there.
Yes, I am. You're wanted. I'm not. If anyone sees me, I'm just retrieving an invoice.
And if Thornton's there?
Then you create a distraction.
He stared at her, jaw tight, and she saw the war in his eyes between keeping her safe and knowing she was right.
I don't like this.
You don't have to like it. You just have to trust me.
She nudged her mare forward, and he followed, muttering under his breath. They left the horses tied in an alley behind the general store and moved through the shadows toward the station. The street was quiet. Most folks already asleep, but a few men lingered outside the saloon. Bessie recognized one of them, a deputy who worked for Thornton.
That's trouble.
I'll handle it.
Before she could argue, he stepped into the light, hands raised.
Evening. I'm looking for the station master. Got a telegram needs sending.
The deputy's hand dropped to his gun.
You're Harrison, and you're making a mistake.
The deputy lunged, and Montgomery sidestepped, driving his elbow into the man's ribs. They grappled, crashing into the saloon wall, and the other men shouted. Bessie didn't wait. She ran for the station, climbed the outside stairs, and jimmied the window open. Inside, Thornton's office smelled of cigars and old paper. She rifled through the desk, found a locked drawer, and pried it open with a letter opener. Inside was a ledger, and her hands shook as she flipped through it. There, in Thornton's own handwriting, entries for the stolen payroll gold, dated the day after the robbery, marked as transferred to a private account in Boise. She stuffed the ledger inside her shawl and turned to leave. The door opened. Thornton stood there, snakehead cane in hand, tapping it slowly against the floor.
Miss Donovan, I thought I heard a rat.
Mr. Thornton, I was just retrieving an invoice you asked me to file.
At this hour. Through the window.
He stepped closer, the cane tapping a steady rhythm, and she backed toward the window.
The door was locked.
And you thought breaking in was the proper solution.
His eyes dropped to the bulge under her shawl, and his smile went cold.
What do you have there?
Nothing that concerns you.
Everything in this town concerns me.
He lunged, surprisingly fast for a man his age, and grabbed her arm. She twisted, the ledger falling, and he snatched it up.
Clever girl. But not clever enough.
He raised the cane, and she knew he meant to strike her. A gunshot cracked outside, and the window exploded inward. Montgomery vaulted through, glass shards raining down, and tackled Thornton. They hit the floor hard, the cane skittering away, and Bessie dove for the ledger.
Get out of here.
Not without you.
She grabbed his arm, hauling him up, and they ran for the stairs. Behind them, Thornton shouted for his men, and boots thundered through the building. They hit the street at a dead run, and Montgomery pulled her toward the alley where the horses waited. A shot rang out, splintering the post beside her head, and she yelped. He shoved her behind a water trough, his body shielding hers, and returned fire.
Can you ride?
Can you stop asking me that?
She was already swinging into the saddle, and he followed, his arm tight around her waist as they spurred the mare into a gallop. The town fell away behind them, shouts and gunfire fading into the night. They didn't stop until they reached the canyon, and even then, he kept them moving, climbing higher into the rocks.
Did you get it?
She pulled the ledger from her shawl, triumphant, and he laughed, breathless and wild.
You're insane.
You're welcome.
He reined in, turned in the saddle, and kissed her. It was quick, fierce, tasting of adrenaline and relief. And when he pulled back, her lips were still parted in surprise.
I've been wanting to do that since you dragged me off your porch.
Took you long enough.
She kissed him back, slower this time, her hand fisting in his shirt, and heat flooded through her that had nothing to do with the chase. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, both of them breathing hard.
We need to move.
I know.
But neither of them moved for a long moment, the world narrowing to the warmth of his hand on her waist and the taste of him on her lips. They made camp high in the rocks, where they could see anyone approaching. Montgomery built a small fire, shielded by boulders, and Bessie sat close, studying the ledger by firelight.
This is everything. Dates, amounts, account numbers. He's been skimming from every shipment for months.
It proves he's a thief, but it doesn't prove I'm innocent.
It proves motive. If he was stealing, he needed a scapegoat. You refused to help him, so he framed you.
A jury might believe it. Or they might hang me anyway and call it justice.
The bitterness in his voice cut her, and she reached for his hand.
We'll make them believe it. I'll testify. I saw him with that ledger.
And make yourself a target.
I'm already a target. So are you. The only way out is through.
He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers, and the firelight flickered across his face.
I didn't ask for a partner.
Too bad. You've got one.
His thumb traced slow circles on the back of her hand, and she felt the tension in him ease. Just a fraction.
What happens after?
After what?
After we clear my name. After Thornton's arrested. What happens to us?
The question hung between them, heavy with things they hadn't said. She thought of her store, empty and waiting, and the life she'd built alone. Then she looked at him. This reckless, brave man who'd stumbled into her world and turned it upside down.
I don't know. But I'd like to find out.
He leaned in, and she met him halfway, the kiss deeper this time, unhurried despite the dangers circling them. His hand cupped her cheek, calloused and gentle, and she sighed against his mouth. When they finally pulled apart, he tucked her against his side, her head on his shoulder, and they watched the fire burn low.
We should sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hell.
You always know just what to say to a girl.
He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest, and she closed her eyes, feeling safer than she had any right to. Dawn came too fast, and with it, the sound of cattle lowing in the distance. Montgomery sat up, hand on his gun, and Bessie scrambled to the ridge to look. Below, a massive herd was moving through the canyon, driven hard and fast toward Cottonwood.
That's not normal. They're stampeding.
Or being stampeded.
He joined her, his face grim, and pointed to riders on the flanks, driving the cattle faster.
Thornton. He's trying to flush us out, or destroy the town looking for us.
If that herd hits Main Street, it'll crush everything. The store, the saloon, the station.
We have to turn them.
How?
We ride ahead, cut them off before they reach town, make them veer into the open valley.
That's suicide.
Got a better idea.
She didn't, and the cattle were already picking up speed, a thundering brown wave of horn and hoof. They ran for the horses, swung into the saddles, and plunged down the slope. The noise was deafening, dust choking the air, and Montgomery rode straight at the leading edge of the herd.
Yell. Wave your arms. Make yourself big.
Bessie screamed, her voice lost in the roar, and swung her shawl overhead like a flag. The lead steers veered, confused, and Montgomery fired his gun into the air. The crack of it spooked the herd further, and they began to turn, slowly, ponderously, like a river changing course. But the riders were closing in, shouting, trying to drive the cattle back on course. One of them recognized Montgomery and raised his rifle.
Get down.
He grabbed Bessie's reins and yanked her mare sideways just as the shot rang out. They hit the ground hard, rolling, and the herd surged around them. Hooves pounded the earth inches from her head, and Montgomery covered her body with his weight pressing her into the dirt. The world was noise and dust and terror. And then, suddenly, silence. The herd had turned, streaming into the valley, and the riders were retreating. Montgomery pulled her up, his hands checking her for injuries.
Are you hurt?
No. You.
I'm fine.
But his hands were shaking, and she caught them, holding tight.
That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen.
You're the one who rode into a stampede waving a shawl.
I learned it from you.
They were both laughing, half hysterical with relief, and he kissed her again, dust and sweat and all. When they pulled apart, the town was visible below, safe, untouched.
We did it.
We're not done yet.
They rode into Cottonwood at noon, and every eye in town turned to watch. Montgomery dismounted in front of the sheriff's office, Bessie at his side, the ledger clutched in her hand. The vigilante posse was there, a dozen men armed and angry, and at their head stood Drexel Thornton, snakehead cane tapping a slow, furious rhythm.
Sheriff, I'm here to turn myself in and present evidence.
The sheriff, an older man with a gray mustache, looked between Montgomery and Thornton, weighing options.
Evidence of what?
Evidence that Mr. Thornton staged the stagecoach robbery, murdered the driver, and framed Montgomery Harrison to cover his own crimes.
She held up the ledger, and a murmur ran through the crowd. Thornton's face went red, and the cane tapped faster.
That's my property. She stole it.
I retrieved it. And it shows every dollar you've stolen, including the payroll gold from the robbery.
The sheriff took the ledger, flipped through it, and his expression darkened.
This true, Drexel. She's lying. She's in league with Harrison. They're both criminals. Then, explain the entries. Explain why you have a record of gold transferred the day after the robbery.
Thornton's face twisted, and he swung the cane at the sheriff. Montgomery moved faster, catching the cane mid-swing and wrenching it away. The snakehead snapped off, and something small and metallic clattered to the ground. Bessie bent and picked it up. A locket. She opened it, and her breath caught. Inside was a photograph, faded and creased, of the murdered stagecoach driver standing beside a younger Thornton, both smiling. On the back, an inscription.
To my partner. The photograph that shouldn't exist.
What?
This driver wasn't just an employee, he was Thornton's partner. And Thornton killed him to keep the gold for himself.
The crowd erupted, voices rising in fury, and Thornton tried to run. The vigilantes grabbed him, dragged him back, and the sheriff slapped irons on his wrists.
You'll hang for this, Drexel. It was business. Just business.
His voice was flat, empty, and Montgomery turned away, disgusted. The sheriff clapped him on the shoulder.
You're a free man, Harrison. And you've got my thanks. Thank her. She's the one who risked everything.
Bessie felt heat rise in her cheeks as the crowd turned to her, clapping, cheering. But all she saw was Montgomery. His blue eyes locked on hers, a smile tugging at his mouth. The town celebrated into the evening, and someone brought out a fiddle. Music spilled into the street, and couples danced under the stars. Bessie stood on her porch, watching, and Montgomery climbed the steps to join her.
You're not dancing.
Neither are you.
I'm not much good at it.
Neither am I.
They stood in comfortable silence, shoulders brushing, until he turned to face her.
I should go. The stagecoach line will want me back in Boise.
Is that what you want?
No.
The word was quiet, certain, and her heart skipped.
I want to stay. Here. With you. If you'll have me.
I dragged you off my porch half dead and got you shot at. Why would you want to stay?
Because you're the bravest, stubbornest, most remarkable woman I've ever met. And I'm in love with you.
She stared at him, the words sinking in, and then she laughed, a breathless, joyful sound.
You're in love with me.
Yes.
You're a terrible liar, Montgomery Harrison.
I'm not lying.
I know. That's why I believe you.
She reached up, cupped his face in her hands, and kissed him. It was soft, slow, and full of promise, and when she pulled back, his eyes were dazed.
Does that mean you'll have me?
It means I already do.
He grinned, swept her up in his arms, and spun her around, laughing. She shrieked, clutching his shoulders, and when he set her down, they were both breathless.
I'll need work.
You can guard the store. I've got plenty of deliveries that need protecting.
I was thinking more along the lines of running it with you.
Partners.
Partners.
She smiled, and he kissed her again, deeper this time, his hand steady on her waist. The town cheered, and someone shouted congratulations, but Bessie didn't care. All she felt was Montgomery, warm and solid in hers. The next morning, the stagecoach line sent a replacement guard, and Montgomery handed over his badge. The supervisor tried to argue, but Montgomery shook his head.
I'm staying in Cottonwood. got a better job waiting for me.
The man grumbled but didn't fight it, and Montgomery walked back to the store with a lightness in his step. Bessie was sweeping the porch, and she looked up when he arrived.
You're officially unemployed.
Officially yours.
That's a lot of responsibility.
I can handle it.
She grinned, leaned the broom against the wall, and took his hand. They walked to the ridge together, the sun climbing high and warm, and stood looking out over the valley. The town stretched below them, peaceful and safe, and Bessie felt a deep contentment settle in her chest.
Think they'll forgive us for slipping away.
Eventually. But we earned a little peace.
We did.
He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, her head resting against his chest. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers, and for a long moment, they just stood there, breathing together.
What do we do now?
Live. Together. Build something good.
Sounds perfect.
She turned in his arms, and he kissed her, slow and sure, the valley stretching wide and bright before them. They had fought for this moment, earned it with courage and trust, and now it was theirs. No more running, no more fear. Just the two of them, standing together, ready for whatever came next. They spent the afternoon cleaning the store together, restocking shelves, and planning for the future. Montgomery proved surprisingly good at organization, and Bessie teased him about his hidden talents.
You're sure you were a stagecoach guard and not a shopkeeper?
I'm a fast learner.
You're a show-off.
Only for you.
She laughed, and he pulled her close, stealing a quick kiss before she swatted him away.
We have work to do.
We have all the time in the world.
Not if you keep distracting me.
Fair point.
They worked side by side, and by evening, the store looked better than it had in weeks. Bessie stood back, hands on her hips, satisfied.
We make a good team.
The best.
He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder.
I'm not going anywhere, Bessie. Ever.
Good. Because I'm not letting you.
She turned in his arms, and they kissed again, slow and deep, the store quiet around them. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and Cottonwood settled into peaceful twilight. They had everything they needed right here, and nothing would tear them apart again. That night, the town gathered for a bonfire, and Montgomery and Bessie joined the celebration. The vigilantes had disbanded. Thornton was locked up awaiting trial, and the stolen gold had been returned to the mining company. Cottonwood felt alive again, hopeful, and Bessie couldn't stop smiling. Montgomery held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, and she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire.
What are you thinking?
That this feels like a dream.
It's real. I promise.
Good. Because I don't want to wake up.
He squeezed her hand, and they watched the flames dance, the stars bright overhead. Someone started a song, and the crowd joined in, voices rising in harmony. Bessie leaned against Montgomery, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close.
I never thought I'd find this.
Find what?
Home.
She looked up at him, her eyes shining, and kissed his cheek.
You did. And you're not losing it.
Not a chance.
They stayed until the fire burned low, and when they finally walked back to the store, The night was quiet and warm. Montgomery followed her inside, and she lit a lantern, the soft glow filling the room.
You can stay here tonight. If you want.
I want.
She smiled, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her close. They stood there for a long moment, just breathing together. And then he kissed her, tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, she was breathless.
I love you, Montgomery Harrison.
I love you, Bessie Donovan.
And that was all they needed. The following week passed in a blur of hard work and quiet happiness. Montgomery proved himself invaluable at the store, and Bessie found herself relying on him more every day. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side, stealing kisses when no one was looking, and planning for the future. One afternoon, a wagon rolled into town, loaded with supplies from Boise. The driver handed Montgomery a letter, and he read it quickly, his face unreadable.
What is it?
The Stagecoach line. They're offering me my job back. Double pay.
Bessie's heart sank, but she kept her voice steady.
Are you going to take it?
No.
He folded the letter and tossed it aside.
I told you. I'm staying.
But double pay. Montgomery. That's a lot of money.
I don't care.
He crossed to her, took her hands, and looked her in the eyes.
I don't want money. I want you. I want this life. And nothing is going to change that.
You're sure?
I've never been more sure of anything.
She kissed him, fierce and grateful, and he held her tight. When they pulled apart, she was smiling.
Then, let's make it official.
Official.
Marry me, Montgomery Harrison.
He stared at her, stunned, and then he laughed. A bright, joyful sound.
I was supposed to ask you.
Too slow.
Yes.
He kissed her again, lifting her off her feet, and she laughed, clinging to his shoulders.
Yes. I'll marry you. Today. Tomorrow. Whenever you want.
How about next Sunday?
Perfect.
They grinned at each other, and the world felt wide and full of promise. Sunday arrived warm and bright, and the whole town turned out for the wedding. Bessie wore a simple white dress, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders, and Montgomery stood at the altar in a new black suit, his eyes locked on hers. The preacher spoke, but Bessie barely heard the words. All she saw was Montgomery, his smile, his steady presence, and the love shining in his blue eyes.
I, Montgomery Harrison, take you, Bessie Donovan, to be my wife, to stand with you, protect you, and love you for the rest of my life.
I, Bessie Donovan, take you, Montgomery Harrison, to be my husband, to stand with you, trust you, and love you for the rest of my life.
The preacher pronounced them married, and Montgomery kissed her, deep and sure, as the crowd erupted in cheers. Bessie laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks, and Montgomery wiped them away with his thumb.
You're crying.
Happy tears.
Good. Because I plan on making you cry a lot more of those.
You're impossible.
And you love me. Anyway.
I do.
They kissed again, and the town celebrated long into the evening. There was music, dancing, and more food than Bessie had seen in months. Montgomery never left her side, his hand always finding hers, and she felt a happiness so deep It almost hurt. When the sun set and the stars came out, they slipped away, walking hand in hand to the ridge overlooking the valley. The town was quiet below them, peaceful and safe, and Bessie leaned against Montgomery, her head on his shoulder.
This is just the beginning.
I know.
We're going to have a good life, Bessie.
The best.
He turned to her, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her, slow and tender. When they pulled apart, she was smiling, tears shining in her eyes.
I love you, Montgomery.
I love you, Bessie. Always.
They stood there together, the valley stretching wide and bright before them, the future theirs to build. They had faced danger, fought for each other, and come through stronger. And now, standing on that ridge under the stars, they knew they could face anything as long as they were together. The next morning, they woke in the cabin behind the store, the sun streaming through the windows. Montgomery pulled Bessie close, and she curled against him, content.
Good morning, Mrs. Harrison.
Good morning, Mr. Harrison.
How does it feel?
Perfect.
He kissed her forehead, and they lay there for a while, just holding each other. Eventually, they got up, dressed, and walked to the store together. The town was already stirring, and people called out congratulations as they passed. Bessie waved, smiling, and Montgomery kept his arm around her waist. When they reached the store, they found a crowd waiting, all with gifts and well wishes. Bessie was overwhelmed, but Montgomery squeezed her hand, steadying her.
We've got this.
Together.
Always.
They spent the day greeting friends, accepting gifts, and planning for the future. By evening, they were exhausted but happy, and they stood on the porch, watching the sun set over the valley.
Thank you.
For what?
For staying. For loving me. For all of it.
Thank you for giving me a reason to stay.
She smiled, and he kissed her, soft and lingering. The town was quiet around them, peaceful and safe, and they knew they had everything they needed right here. Together, they had built something strong, something lasting, and nothing would ever tear them apart. As the stars came out, they went inside, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. Because they had each other, and that was all that mattered. Colorized late 1800s American West photograph. Natural light, gentle contrast, slightly soft focus, subtle film grain, faint dust/scratches, slight vignetting, no text, no watermark. Same two leads as pic_1. Woman with auburn hair and braid, green eyes, simple day dress. Cowboy with dark brown hair, blue eyes, tan shirt, leather vest, black hat. Newlywed couple standing on general store porch at sunset. Cowboy's arm around woman's waist, both looking out over valley with content expressions. Warm golden evening light. Foreground shows wooden porch railing with potted herbs. Midground store facade with open door. Background Valley V the following week brought new challenges. A rancher rode into town with news of rustlers hitting homesteads along the ridge, and the sheriff asked Montgomery to help track them. Bessie insisted on coming along, and he didn't argue. They rode out at dawn with a small posse, following tracks through the foothills. The trail led to a narrow canyon, and Montgomery signaled everyone to stop.
They're holed up in there. We need to be smart about this.
How many?
4, maybe 5.
The sheriff nodded, and they split into 2 groups. Montgomery and Bessie took the high ground, climbing the rocky slope while the others circled around. Halfway up, Bessie's boot slipped on loose shale, and Montgomery grabbed her arm, pulling her steady.
Careful.
I'm fine.
You're stubborn.
You love it.
I do.
They reached the top and looked down into the canyon. 5 men sat around a fire, rifles stacked nearby, and a dozen stolen cattle penned in a makeshift corral. Montgomery scanned the area, plotting angles, and Bessie crouched beside him.
We can trap them if we block the south exit.
Risky. If they scatter, we lose them.
Then, we don't let them scatter.
He grinned, and they signaled the sheriff below. The plan was set. Montgomery and Bessie would create a distraction while the others moved in. They picked up rocks and started a small slide, sending stones tumbling into the canyon. The rustlers jumped up, grabbing weapons, and Montgomery fired a warning shot.
Drop your guns and surrender. You're surrounded.
The rustlers cursed, looking around wildly, and one made a break for the south exit. The sheriff's men were waiting, and the rustler pulled up short, hands rising. The others followed suit, and within minutes, all 5 were disarmed and tied. The cattle were safe, and the posse cheered. Montgomery helped Bessie down the slope, and she stumbled into his arms at the bottom.
Show off.
Says the woman who planned the whole thing.
They rode back to town with the rustlers in tow, and the ranchers shook their hands gratefully. The town threw another celebration, and this time, Montgomery pulled Bessie onto the dance floor.
I thought you couldn't dance.
I thought you couldn't either.
Guess we'll learn together.
They swayed awkwardly, stepping on each other's feet, laughing until tears streamed down their faces. It wasn't graceful, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. Later, they walked home under the stars, and Montgomery stopped in the middle of the street, pulling her close.
I never thought I'd find this.
What?
Home.
She kissed him, soft and sweet, and they stood there for a long moment, the world quiet around them. When they finally pulled apart, she smiled.
Let's go home, cowboy.
Yes, ma'am.
They walked the rest of the way hand in hand, and when they reached the cabin, Montgomery swept her up in his arms, carrying her over the threshold. She laughed, holding on tight, and he kicked the door shut behind them. The future stretched out ahead, full of promise and possibility, and they were ready to face it together. The next week brought a new challenge, when word came that a band of outlaws was riding toward Cottonwood, looking to settle old scores with the sheriff. The town braced for trouble, and Montgomery volunteered to ride out and scout their position. Bessie refused to let him go alone.
You're not leaving me behind.
It's dangerous.
So is everything we've done. I'm coming.
He knew better than to argue, and they rode out together at dawn, tracking the outlaws through the foothills. They found them camped near a creek. 6 hard-faced men cleaning weapons and passing a bottle. Montgomery and Bessie dismounted quietly, tying their horses in the trees, and crept closer.
We need to get back and warn the sheriff.
Wait. Look at that.
She pointed to a 7th man, tied to a tree, bruised and bloodied. Montgomery squinted and swore under his breath.
That's Deputy Miller. They must have grabbed him on patrol.
We can't leave him.
We can't take 6 armed men.
We don't have to. We just need to get him out.
She was already moving, circling wide through the brush, and Montgomery followed, heart pounding. They reached the tree from behind, and Bessie pulled out a knife, cutting the ropes, while Montgomery kept watch. The deputy's eyes fluttered open, and he tried to speak, but Montgomery pressed a hand over his mouth.
Quiet. We're getting you out.
They hauled him up, and the 3 of them slipped back toward the horses. But one of the outlaws stood, stretching, and turned their way. He froze, eyes narrowing, and then shouted.
Run.
They bolted, half dragging the deputy between them, and bullets cracked through the trees. Montgomery fired back, buying time, and they reached the horses. He threw the deputy over one saddle, and Bessie swung up behind him. Montgomery mounted his own horse, and they kicked into a gallop, the outlaws mounting up to give chase. The chase was brutal, the terrain rough, and the deputy barely conscious. Bessie held him steady, her arms aching, and Montgomery rode alongside, firing over his shoulder to keep the outlaws back. They crested a ridge, and Montgomery saw the town in the distance.
Almost there.
But one of the outlaws was gaining, his horse faster, and he raised his rifle. Montgomery yanked his reins hard, his horse rearing, and he fired. The outlaw toppled from his saddle, and the others pulled up, unwilling to ride into the town's guns. Montgomery and Bessie thundered into Cottonwood, and the sheriff rushed out with his men. They took the deputy inside, and the doctor started working on him immediately. Bessie collapsed against the porch railing, gasping for breath, and Montgomery sat beside her, equally spent.
You're insane.
You're one to talk.
I know.
He took her hand, and they sat there, catching their breath, until the doctor came out and gave them a nod.
He'll live.
Relief flooded through them, and Bessie leaned her head on Montgomery's shoulder.
We make a good team.
The best.
That night, the town posted guards, and the outlaws never came. Word spread that Cottonwood wasn't an easy target, and the band moved on. The sheriff thanked Montgomery and Bessie publicly, and the town celebrated once more. But this time, Montgomery and Bessie slipped away early, riding up to a ridge overlooking the valley. They dismounted and stood together, watching the lights of the town below.
It's beautiful.
It is.
He turned to her, pulling her close, and kissed her deeply. When they pulled apart, he smiled.
Marry me.
We're already married.
I know, but I want to say it again. Marry me every day for the rest of my life.
Yes.
She kissed him again, and they held each other as the stars came out. Tomorrow they would ride down and face whatever came next. But tonight, they had this moment, this peace, this love. And it was everything. The next week brought a new challenge. A traveling preacher rode into town, claiming to represent a mining company that wanted to buy up land along the river. He offered generous prices, but something about him made Bessie uneasy. His smile was too smooth, his words too rehearsed, and when he tapped his fingers on the bar counter, she noticed a tell. 3 quick taps, always 3. Montgomery noticed too.
That man's hiding something.
Agreed. Let's find out what.
They followed the preacher when he left town, keeping their distance. He rode to a camp in the hills, where 3 rough-looking men waited. Bessie and Montgomery dismounted quietly, creeping close enough to hear.
The land survey's a fake. They're planning to dam the river upstream and flood the valley.
Then, sell the flooded land for nothing and buy up the high ground cheap.
Exactly.
The preacher handed over a map, and the men laughed. One of them asked when they would start, and the preacher said 2 days. Montgomery's jaw tightened, and Bessie touched his arm.
We need proof.
Let's get that map.
They waited until the men settled in for the night, then crept into camp. Montgomery lifted the map from the preacher's saddlebag while Bessie kept watch. But one of the men stirred, reaching for his rifle, and she hissed a warning. Montgomery froze, map in hand, and the man sat up, blinking.
Now.
They ran, the camp erupting behind them, and bullets whipped past. They reached their horses and rode hard, the map clutched tight. Back in town, they showed the sheriff, and he called an emergency meeting. The townspeople gathered, furious, and the sheriff sent deputies to arrest the preacher and his men. They caught them trying to flee, and the preacher's smooth facade crumbled. He begged for mercy, tapping his fingers nervously, 3 quick taps, over and over. The town voted to run them out, and by sunset, they were gone. The valley was safe, and the town threw a feast in Montgomery and Bessie's honor.
We're becoming local heroes.
You are. I'm just along for the ride.
Liar.
She elbowed him playfully, and he caught her around the waist, pulling her close.
Fine. We're heroes. Together.
Better.
They danced again, and this time they were a little better, a little smoother. The town clapped and cheered, and someone played a lively tune. Bessie laughed, breathless. And Montgomery spun her skirt flaring. When the song ended, he dipped her low, and she gasped, clutching his shoulders.
Don't drop me.
Never.
He pulled her upright and kissed her, and the crowd hooted and whistled. They broke apart, grinning, and walked home hand in hand. Inside the cabin, Montgomery pulled her close again, his hands on her waist, and she rested her forehead against his.
I love you.
I love you more.
Impossible.
Prove it.
She kissed him, slow and deep, and he lifted her, carrying her to the bed. They fell together, laughing and kissing, the world outside forgotten. This was their life now, full of danger and joy, work and love, and neither would trade it for anything. The next weeks passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Montgomery took on jobs guarding shipments, and Bessie expanded the store, bringing in new goods. They saved money, planning for a bigger cabin, maybe livestock. But peace never lasted long in Cottonwood. One scorching afternoon, a rider galloped into town, horse-lathered and wild-eyed.
Fire. Wildfire coming from the east.
The town erupted into action. Men grabbed shovels and buckets, and women soaked blankets. Montgomery found Bessie at the store, loading supplies into a wagon.
You need to evacuate.
I'm not leaving.
Bessie, the fire will be here in hours.
Then we have hours to stop it.
He wanted to argue, but he knew that look. Instead, he helped her load the wagon, and they rode out with the fire crew. The sky was orange, smoke rolling in thick waves, and the heat was brutal. They reached the fire break the men were digging, a wide trench meant to starve the flames. Montgomery and Bessie joined in, shoveling dirt, backs aching. The fire roared closer, a wall of orange and black, and embers rained down. One landed on Bessie's shawl, and Montgomery slapped it out, pulling her close.
Stay near me.
Always.
The flames hit the firebreak, and for a terrible moment, it seemed like it would jump. But the trench held, and the fire turned, spreading away from town. The crew cheered, exhausted, and Montgomery pulled Bessie into his arms, both of them filthy and sweating.
You're impossible.
You love it.
I do.
They rode back to town as heroes again, and the sheriff shook Montgomery's hand.
You two are turning into legends. Just doing what needs doing.
But the town disagreed. They threw another celebration, smaller this time, just a gathering at the saloon. Montgomery and Bessie sat together, his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, bone-tired, but happy.
We should take a day off.
What's that?
I don't know. I've forgotten.
He laughed, and she smiled, her eyes closing.
Rest. I'll get you home.
He carried her to the wagon, and she didn't protest, too exhausted to argue. At the cabin, he laid her gently on the bed and pulled off her boots. She murmured something, half asleep, and he brushed a kiss to her forehead.
Sleep. Love.
He watched her for a moment, then stripped off his own boots and lay beside her, pulling her close. She curled into him instinctively, and he closed his eyes, content. This was home. Not the cabin, not the town, but her. Wherever she was, that was home. The next morning, they woke to birdsong and sunshine streaming through the windows. Montgomery kissed Bessie awake, and she stretched lazily, smiling.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mrs. Harrison.
I'll never get tired of hearing that.
Good. Because I'll never get tired of saying it.
They dressed and walked into town together, and the sheriff flagged them down.
Got a telegram for you, Harrison. From the Stagecoach Company.
Montgomery opened it, read it, and handed it to Bessie. The company was offering him a supervisor position in Boise. Good pay, stable work. Bessie looked up at him, waiting.
What do you think?
It's your decision.
No. It's ours.
She smiled, warmth flooding through her.
I think Cottonwood needs us more than Boise does.
I think you're right.
He crumpled the telegram and tossed it in the trash. The sheriff grinned.
Smart man.
That afternoon, they rode up to the ridge overlooking the valley, the same spot where Montgomery had proposed under the stars. They dismounted and stood together. The town spread out below, peaceful and thriving.
We built something here.
We did.
He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat.
I love you, Bessie Donovan Harrison.
I love you, Montgomery Harrison.
Forever.
Forever.
They stood there as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Tomorrow they would ride down and face whatever came next, together, as they always had. But for now, they had this moment, this peace, this love. And it was everything they needed. The town below began lighting lanterns, warm glows appearing one by one, and Montgomery kissed Bessie softly. When they pulled apart, she smiled, her green eyes shining.
Let's go home.
Yes, ma'am.
They mounted their horses and rode down the ridge side by side, the evening air warm and gentle. Below, their cabin waited, lights already glowing in the windows. Friends waved as they passed, calling out greetings. And Montgomery and Bessie waved back, grinning. They reached the cabin and dismounted, and Montgomery took Bessie's hand, pulling her close one more time.
Thank you.
For what?
For everything. For saving my life. For believing in me. For loving me.
Thank you for staying. For fighting beside me. For being my home.
He kissed her deeply, and she melted into him, the world fading away. When they finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, they walked inside together, hand in hand, ready for whatever adventures tomorrow would bring. Because they had each other, and that was all they needed. Forever.